This podcast is hosted by Sheza Barbour, co-founder of Good Tree Institute, and joined by licensed therapist Archie Aquino and our resident scholar and founder, Dr. Nadia Qatranji.
With Nadia Qatranji and Archie Aquino, as we keep discussing the story of Surat Yusuf, the story of Joseph. And where we left off last episode was when we had the wife of the Aziz and the Aziz kind of confronting each other and talking about what happened, right? Like the instance when it was found, I guess we could say, right? Where that the Aziz walked in and saw what was going on between Yusuf and his wife and really confronted her about what it is that she did and was really upfront about it, but at the same time had an interesting take on it. Well, from what we thought was a very cool, calm, and collected response to what his wife had done. So we're going to jump right back into the story and see how it unfolds, where the drama gets out into the community. And like most times, drama gets out into the community. And what do we do about it? And how do we manage it? And how do we handle it from all perspectives? So I'm going to kick it back to Dr. Nadia to kick us off with ayah number 30th is where we're at right now.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. So yeah, exactly as you said, Shaza. So now where we're at is we are at the time when basically it got out, right? And as you said, just to kind of like reiterate what you mentioned, that in the beginning, the wife of the Aziz tried to blame Yusuf for it. But when it was found out, now she just has to go in a different way. And she wanted to figure out how to basically what to do about it. So here, let's see what she said. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ, and said the woman in the city. So basically, they knew about it. What did they say? امرأة العزيز تراود فتاها عن نفسه. The wife of the Aziz is seeking her slave boy, basically. That's what fata is usually translated, about himself. So he was, since he was staying in her castle. So that's what they said. They said exactly the same word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described in the beginning. She's seducing Yusuf about himself. And then look what they said. They said, قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا. قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا. So shaghafa, the word shaghafa comes, the root word means it's the inner lining of the heart. And then hub, of course, this is the word of love, and the root of it means to persist, to hold on, keep on. And it's also the meaning of a grain, habbi. And the heart is usually kind of considered as this grain. That's why it's called, when you love, it's like it's the heart that's engaged in that love. And there is the aspect of persistence. When you love, it's something you hold on so tightly. You're all engaged in it. And when you say shaghafa hubban, now it's not only love, it's love that reached to the lining of the heart. It's a love that actually just was absorbed fully in the heart to the point that it's actually, even the inner lining is engulfed in it. So that's it deep. Has the translate. Yeah, exactly. It's just like it's a very visual expression, an intense expression of a visual expression of how intense this love is. Indeed, he has filled his heart with his love. قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا. And then here's the commentary that they made afterwards. إِنَّا لَنَرَاهَا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. We definitely see her in a clear loss, like, oh, she is totally wrong. How could she do something like that? So this is where we're at, right? So let's just, as you said, okay, now it's out. Let's address this point first before we move forward.
Yeah, I don't know where in the story it got out, because when the incident happened, it was just the Aziz and the wife and Yusuf in the room, and he said, don't talk about it, but somehow it got out. She wouldn't talk about it, would she?
I don't know, but
Absolutely not.
Yeah, she might not talk about it. I don't think so from what we know as the surah goes on, but no secret ever stays a secret, especially these kinds of passionate secrets, you know?
It's
Even
too.
like nowadays, I feel like I even know instances of, people that have had like these quote unquote secret marriages and they thought it was a secret marriage, but guess what? It got out somehow, whether it was the person themselves that was boasting it and made a slip and said something and it circulated in the community. Or unfortunately, I've even heard instances where like the child or like a teenager finds out that their dad is doing something, like literally physically sees it happening. And so I always feel like you just can't trust secrets, no matter, especially with these
Well,
types of secrets. Like they always have a way of getting out. And I'm just assuming if you're living in a palace and you're the Aziz, you've got servants, you've got people all over the place taking care of things that they might have witnessed what had
you
happened.
know, it might also be true that, because I'm thinking from, all my counseling experience with clients, people who have these dark secrets, they always try to talk to somebody about them, whether it be a counselor, their best friend, somebody. They want someone to like validate it. They want someone to be like, oh, I can understand how that happened. So maybe she did.
Yeah, and then even on top of it, I think also if you want to think about it, especially, there are people who are on the outlook for these kinds of juicy information, something to bring out to the media, because that's what people like to do. I mean, we know that, right? Especially when you are at this level of fame, people are after you to see
Yeah.
any bit of information to put it out in the public and have it become some kind of like a substance for gossip and a substance for talking and attraction for people to engage in.
There's always
And
people who want to tear the public figures down, bring them down to size,
Yeah.
basically.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, it's kind of a part of human nature. I mean, in any community, it's just people, like, people just like to talk about this kind of stuff and share information and spread it. And it's like, becomes the talk of the town,
Yeah, yeah.
And it's unfortunate because sometimes, these things destroy lives as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
It's
so true. And yeah, go ahead, Archie.
it's ironic because nobody wants anyone to talk about their secrets, but if they learn about someone else's secrets, they don't think there's any problem with go ahead and spreading that.
Yeah, and it's so frowned upon in our tradition. Like Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that's one of the things he always mentions, like min husni islam al-mar tark ma la yani. It's part of a kind of like it's a manifestation that you have a sound Islam is that you don't engage in something that's none of your business. As when
Right.
you see something or somebody says something in front of you, just leave it as it is, wherever it is. You don't convey it. It's not your business. You don't have the right to actually talk about somebody else's issues if they didn't ask for that. It's their thing. And that's something that we need to even train children in doing. Like, you have to learn to become like that. I remember with my children one time, something, was internally happening, and children are children, right? They would say things. So the next time, my child was like, okay, well, what about this? I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to tell you.
Yeah.
You're not you. And they learned it, that, hey, this is very important. And I respect, even sometimes they would be speaking about something with their friends. They say, Mama, this is something I cannot mention to you. And I totally respect that. I love the fact that they're just like very meticulous about, this is something that they trusted me in. I cannot go about and mention it.
Yeah.
That's
I've done the
very
same thing with my kids as well, where, there's a lesson to be learned and I'll share the lesson. But when, people are inquisitive, like, who did it happen to? Who are we talking about? I'm like, it's none of your business. It's not important who, it's the lesson to be learned from it. And that is their secret to share if they decide to ever share it. Maybe they don't.
Exactly.
But that is nothing for us to go around telling. It's more important to understand, what do you gain out of the situation or the lesson that is presented at hand. Or a warning. Sometimes it's a warning to tell others about.
So that's like it takes education, because the natural instinct is it's hard to keep the secret in. I mean, I remember as a kid, if I learned something, I just had to go tell somebody. Like it was the
Right.
worst pain in your soul to keep something secret. So it's like you have
Especially
to
for
be educated.
children.
Yeah. Children love going around and tell something that people are going to listen to them for. Like it makes them feel important.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Right. You
Yeah.
learn a lot of things from kids. Sometimes they come to you and they're like, what's going on? And, especially if you're dealing in like classroom
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
But, coming to a more serious point and perspective, I kind of want to bring this out there is that, is it always gossip? Are there exceptions when you should talk about something? Like, I'm just thinking and just, even recent times that sometimes there's victims involved, right? Or someone is asking, for instance, about a person who maybe, is being proposed to, whether it's in marriage or maybe it's somebody's, going into business with somebody else, kind of asking for a character reference. So where do we draw the line of what's gossip and what is a character reference or sharing the right information? I feel
I
like
think
that's
it comes
always, yeah.
it comes to like intention, and Socrates has these three questions, and I think it's still relevant till today. It helps me out as a counselor as well. Like, first of all, is it true? Is it verifiable? Because a lot of gossip is distortions of truth, and it's just a bunch of lies sometimes. Is it kind? Like, are you really trying to help somebody by sharing this information? Are you being malicious in trying to hurt somebody? And is it really necessary? Like, what is the basis for needing to share this information? And
Exactly.
those three filters really do eliminate a lot of unnecessary talk.
Yeah, and I think this is also going off of what you said, Archie, regarding the training aspect. I think when the interest is about the health of the community and the health of your surroundings, like being really sound and an environment that's nourishing versus a toxic environment. When I care about it this way, then that's something that kind of like sometimes I feel that this conversation, if I do it, it's going to erode the community. Versus if I don't do it, it's going to erode the community. Like that would be where my compass basically. What is for the best interest of the community, of the people? And that's what I have to outweigh. Like, yeah, I might kind of like want to talk or want to not talk versus what's important, what's needed at this point. That's why the Prophet ﷺ always, like in general, when it comes to gossip, no, he would not. He would just like, don't tell me about certain people, about my people. I want to come out with a clean heart. However, if there are certain people who would be like, oh yeah, he's a hypocrite or something like that, he would know. Not everybody, by the way, knew who the hypocrites were. There was a Sahabi actually who knew that, and he shared it with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so he would know how to deal with it, but he would not. This is not a public information. You don't want to damage people's images. You don't want to damage what's going on, so that people there is that sound community.
Yeah, in domestic violence, like with the other organizations we talk about, if someone asks you about a potential spouse, like there's kind of a duty to let someone know, like, hey, this person has a history of hurting his spouses.
Exactly.
Like you have to let the future potential spouse know that. And that's not gossip. That's to help them to make a better decision about this.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's continue on with the story because I think it gets even more interesting. The drama unfolds.
Yep. Totally. So now the wife of Aziz knows. She heard that they're talking about her. So now, okay, she can't. It's clear now. It's known. So she can't deflect and say it's not me anymore. Now she's going into another route. So here's what she does. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ بِمَكْرِهِنَّ أَرْسَلَتْ إِلَيْهِنَّ. So when she heard of their scheme and their plot and they were talking about her, she sent to them. She basically sent an invitation. وَأَعْتَدَتْ لَهُنَّ مُتَّكَأً. And she prepared a kind of like a banquet. A muttaka is like this very, very comfortable seating. She prepared a banquet for them. وَآتَتْ كُلَّ وَاحِدَةٍ مِّنْهُنَّ سِكِّينًا. And as she prepared that whole seating and food and everything, she made sure that all of them had knives in there as they're eating. right? And then as they were all sitting and enjoying themselves, then she said to Yusuf alayhi salam, وَقَالَتِ اخْرُجْ عَلَيْهِنْ. She told him, come out onto them, let them see you. فَلَمَّا رَأَيْنَهُ. So when they saw him, أَكْبَرْنَهُ. They greatly admired him. Like he's just like, this is so amazing. وَقَطَّعْنَ أَيْدِيَهُنْ. And they start basically, because they were so much in awe of just looking at him, they became oblivious of the knife in their hands, and they started making small cuts in their hands. وَقُلْنَ حَاشَ لِلَّهِ. And they said, oh no, glory be to God, he is not a human. مَا هَذَا بَشَرًا. This is not a normal person. So not only that he was very handsome, he had a charisma, he had a presence, he had an awe. There was an awe about him. In hada illa malakun kareem. That's exactly what they said. This is no one except an angel that is very noble. That's just like not normal, right? So that was the response. There's this. His presence was they were very in awe of him, not only from a perspective of like just a man, but also just as of like his presence, because of he is a prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here is what she said. At this point, there's like, see, she got them to see why she was into him. She said, قالت فذلكن الذي لمتنني فيه. See, this is the situation that you blamed me for. وَلَقَدْ رَاوَدتُّهُ عَنْ نَفْسِهِ فَاسْتَعْصَمَ. And I definitely, certainly sought to seduce him from himself. And he withheld. So she said it. But when did she say it? She said it when she knew that they were very clear that her action in their head was justified. And then she said, وَلَئِنْ لَمْ يَفْعَلْ مَا آمُرُهُ لَيَسْجَنَنَّ وَلَيَكُونَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ. If he does not do what I've commanded him to do, then I'm going to basically have him be imprisoned. And he was going to be among the ones who are humiliated. He's going to be having a consequence if he does not listen to me.
Yeah. Talk about drama, man. This is like TV drama. It could be a show, just in terms of when you think about how much planning she also put into this. Like she threw a party. She invited all the girls,
the Real Housewives,
all the ladies. Yeah. And like staged everything so he would come in and everybody would be in awe and cut their fingers. It's so interesting.
Yep.
But she did it in a way that's, typical justifier. Yeah, I did it, and then here's my reason, right? Mm-hmm. And so she just totally wanted to deflect from what her accountability was by saying, "Oh, but there's this real good reason why I did it," and that's not.
You would do the same thing.
That's not someone who's really accountable. Yeah, it's reasonable. What I did's reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, very clear. Yeah. Go ahead, Archie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but it's like, people of quality don't do that. People who you really are stand-up people, they don't have to have an excuse of why they did something. They'll just own it.
Yeah, totally. And I think if we want to go off of where we started with the brothers of Yusuf, peace be upon him, if you remember, they were like blaming their dad, and they were blaming Yusuf for not being loved. And we kind of talked about that victim mentality. And this is basically an extension of it. I would say sometimes it would be more of, and of course, would love to hear from your comments, Archie, on that. It could be the next level of, like, if you, just like in her case, where she started by blaming, and when she realized she can't blame anymore, she basically shifted into justifying why she did that. But it's kind of like the other side of it. And sometimes some people go right away into justifying. It's kind of like justification is a little bit sometimes more mild. Like, yeah, I own my mistake, but here are my reasons. I'm not saying I'm not wrong, but here are my reasons. Like, there's that passive aspect of it. Sometimes people are not coming from an aspect of arrogance or like always blaming others for it, but more of just being powerless. Yes. More of, I can't do that. I mean, this is my case. Look at my condition, kind of thing.
So there's no one specific to blame. It's just I'm a victim of
Exactly.
circumstance and a situation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
I think it'd
it's,
be interesting to see, like, kind of what are some examples, like, just to make it real for all of us that are listening. What are we talking about? Like, what are specific examples that just so we can identify, do I do this? Like, when do we justify or when do we blame? Even in situations that might not be as extreme as here with between the wife of the Aziz and Yusuf.
yeah, totally. I mean, it's good to notice, like the language of justifying, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting when we worked with teens about it. It's just we had like a kind of board full of expressions of what we say and what we do. I mean, this is just like this is a very small handful of it, but it's just it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing how much we say it. Like, yeah, everyone is doing it. No one understands. It exists for a reason. It's not my fault that this is the case,
Mm-hmm.
or I can't help myself.
I can't help myself. That's always a big one. Like, I can't help it. It's like, yes, you can.
Yeah,
You
that's a
own
cop
yourself.
out.
Yeah. Or I see one down here. It's not that bad.
Yeah,
We call that minimizing. Minimizing. It's bad, but it's not that bad. It's just a little bad.
yeah, totally. Or it's just this one time, right? Just like even with the brothers,
Oh,
it's like just
yeah.
this one time. It's not going to be the end of the world if you just do it once. This is a huge justification that we all use.
Oh, that's huge peer pressure right there.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
How much,
Or
I mean, have
it
we
doesn't
all
affect
encountered
me,
it?
right? When it's just like it doesn't affect me. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it might be a good idea to start seeing which ones do you really go to. Like for me, the biggest justification that I use is it's just the way it is. Like I can't not do this. There's no other way around it. It's kind of like this is the situation and it's locked for me.
Yeah.
The feeling of helplessness, basically, right?
It's common these days. People are misusing because in addiction therapy, there's a point at which you just have to accept something's out of your control. But if you're saying something's out of your control when it's really not out of your control, then you're justifying
Exactly.
and you're escaping accountability. And a lot of people will say it is what it is, right? It's a way of
Well,
I'm resigned.
Well, even when you say that it's out of my control, and like with addiction, right? But the moment you address like this is the actual reality of it, and I want to do something about it, then it's not justification anymore.
Right.
I'm moving to the next level where it's like, okay, I really actually need a support and a help in this. There's that ownership of it. See, that's the problem with justifying, is that if you look here, it becomes the problem is that the more, once you justify, you're locked into this constant vicious cycle. It helps you to keep doing the mistake over and over, or whatever that action is, over and over, because you have a reason. You're giving a justification all the time. So it's the issue at stake happens over and over. That's the major problem with it. There is no way around it. There's no way out of it.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah.
direct correlation between relieving yourself of responsibility with losing power.
Totally. Yeah. Nothing is going to change. It's just going to stay the way it is.
Yeah. I just wanted to take a minute and talk about the blame side of it. We talked about the justification side,
Yeah.
but
Let me put
there's
that
the
back.
other side, which is the blame, and some of the examples of, what do we do when we blame, right? It's the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
And so some of them, I mean, if you are on video, you can see the screen, but just to call them out, some of the common blame statements are, well, you make me angry, or no one cares. You do it too. I mean, how many times do people say that? You do it too. Or why didn't you stop me? And then it becomes, it's your fault. You didn't help. You're always blaming me. You're wrong.
Or you're
You know?
attacking me. You're attacking. Oh my, I'm
Yeah.
being attacked here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Or you're
all.
being sensitive, by the way. This is something that is now oh my God, it's used so much. You're being sensitive.
Yeah, you're too sensitive.
You're too sensitive. Yeah.
So it's more targeted. It's more specific to an individual instead of just a situation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the thing about blame. I think there's an attack, right? With blaming, you're attacking. With justifying, you're really just defending. It's kind of like, again, both of them have this lack of power aspect. But one is, I would say, a little bit more tolerable from people around you. There is no trust. Like, you're not going to trust both cases. In both cases, when you're constantly justifying, I can't trust you. I really not. It's the relationship is not working. Whatever it is that we're engaged in is not working because of how much you justify.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a
So
red
these are some of
flag.
the consequences of what happens when we
Exactly.
go through
Exactly.
these like personal statements that whether we're in our heads or we're actually articulating them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and even the other aspect of justifying what people, it really does have a huge impact on the community and in general. When that's the case, things become dysfunctional. You cannot have true relationships, and you cannot
Mm-hmm.
have powerful interactions because there's always a way out. There's no, people are not being accountable and responsible, and there's a way out all the time. I don't like this, I'd cancel people. I don't
Yeah.
like that. I'm just like, I'll escape. I'll be passive about it.
And if you see the same kind of thing happening again and again, where the same problem happens, no one's being held accountable, you kind of get apathetic about the problem. Like the problem's never going to get fixed, and then you just don't care anymore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just, again, as I said, that there is that dichotomy, or there's that kind of like constant. You have to choose between two always. Justifying makes things easy and comfortable. It's easy to justify. It's comfortable to justify. It's the default. However, we gotta know that it's coming out of the real reason here is I just don't want to be responsible. And when I don't want to be responsible, I'm not powerful. So it's a choice. Really, at the end of the day, I can always be comfortable and have it easy, but I have to remember that I'm lending my power to whatever I'm justifying. And I'm going to continue staying in this condition and hoping somehow it's going to change. Somehow, miraculously, things will change. And we know that's not the case.
Right. I mean, our society now, I feel like nowadays in these past couple of years, we talk a lot about owning your power, right? And not giving up your power. And this is an example of just like, even in our dean, like this is where you got to take responsibility and regain your power in the situation and accountability in it. So I think
Yeah,
it's important. Go ahead.
no, I just wanted to say that notice how easy it is for you to notice when people justify in front of you, but you can't catch yourself.
Right.
Just like as always, right? It's very, because you're easily noticing how much you're impacted by when people justify their actions and they don't own up to their actions, whereas you don't notice that you're doing that to others, or honestly to yourself, that you're the first one
Yeah.
that's being impacted. Yeah, go ahead, Shazam.
I think it's, maybe a good introspective homework assignment for all of us and for our listeners is just really noticing every time, you've justified a mistake. Being able to just journal it, keep track, look back into your past friendships or relationships, see how many have you lost so far and see what you were doing, like where you were justifying yourself of, well, that's because da 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 da. And then you can look back and be like, well, God, I've lost a lot of friends along the way. And what have I done? And where am I really at fault for this loss of friendship or loss in a relationship? Instead of blaming it that, well, it's so and so's fault or this is why this happened. I think it's a good exercise for all of us to really think about this and apply it to ourselves, our own personal lives.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to what you're saying, Shaza. I think this is great to start with looking at your past experiences and past relationships and notice the first reaction that you're going to say when you notice that is that you're going to put the blame on the other side and say it happened because they did. And that's the first knee-jerk reaction that you're going to get. So go past it and say, okay, well, let me just see. Maybe from their perspective, that's not the case. Maybe they saw something I was doing that I'm not seeing. What would that,
Right.
like, I'm wondering, what would that be? It's
Right.
not comfortable, but just be true to yourself for one moment, just like look at it. And after you do that aspect with past things, start learning, observe yourself as you're going through your day. It could be in the beginning, you may not catch yourself, but maybe at the end of the day, as you said, just like go back and look. Okay, well, let me just take a look today. What are when did I justify? The more you do that, the more you start actually catching yourself as you're doing the justification. Like you catch yourself. Just observe. Be as they say, a fly on the wall for you in your life. Like don't
Right.
be don't be judgmental. Be neutral. Just observe. Notice. Oh, here I am. Oh, I'm justifying. I'm actually justifying, and take it lightly. Like don't make it heavy for yourself. Just take it lightly. Just be an observer because we're going to address this as we go later on in the story, but now just train yourself to notice yourself and observe yourself.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
made a good point. Otherwise, you feel bad if you're pointing out, I'm doing all these bad things, I'm justifying, I'm blaming, and you just feel like you have all these flaws. But you're not doing it for the sake of self blame and self shame. You're doing it to increase your ability to be, I don't know, more active and more powerful in your life.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the catch. It's just like, remember, we all, as human beings, we all do that. Just observe, because the observation, neutral observation, is your access, is your way. You have a chance to do something otherwise about it, besides just the natural default way that we do.
And it takes effort, because I
It
think
does.
there's a natural tendency to do the justification. Every
Totally.
teenager does it. Every young
Every
person
human
gets
being,
into the habit of it.
we all do it. We all do that. Absolutely. Oh, so I mean, one of my habits were just to be late, right? I mean, it was just something that took forever, and I always had justifications. I always had legitimate, valid reasons of why it was late, until I just said, and I start observing myself. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to let this happen and to take control over your life to the point that you became notorious of being late?
Yeah. And you got to remember, like, you're dealing with people of all levels. And if someone who is actively taking accountability for themselves is used to that kind of operating in life, and then you come at them with this justification and blaming and all this excuse making, it just comes off as you're disrespectful, and you're not a very responsible person.
True.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to bring it back to the story and kind of close off the session, you know, as a reminder, where this started from is just really observing the wife of the Aziz, right? And how she set up the stage and how she wanted to now justify her actions, what she did, and blame Yusuf for it, basically, kind of saying, it's not my fault, it's him. Look at him. But the takeaway from it is, even if we're not in those types of, intense situations like Yusuf and the wife of the Aziz, it's really to just, take this time until the next episode and observe in your life, when things don't go as intended, and when do you justify your actions and mistakes. you know um, Observe your justification. It's an easy refuge that we all do as humans. We just fall back into this. But it's really important that all of this work that we do and that we're talking about even in the story is really about training ourselves, right? So it's getting those muscles and being able to think through, catch ourselves before it happens or when it has happened, so you can kind of foresee it and stop things from happening and really take your power back. So this is something that we just want to leave on this note, is just being in the state of, this is a process, and it's shifting your way of being, and it takes time. it takes effort, right? But this is all part of the journey of the transformation. And it's like these prophetic transformations that we're learning from in this surah as well. So we want to leave you off with that note until our next episode, when then we look at things, I think, eventually from the perspective of Yusuf, where he's like, wait a second, I've been wrongly accused. What do you do now? What if you're in that position when you're the one that's just been accused of something you didn't do, or it wasn't your fault? So it gets more interesting. So stick with us as we continue the story of Surah Yusuf. And until next time, take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
If you like listening to our conversation about the Quran, imagine how much more you would get out of participating in a live conversation about the Quran with Dr. Nadia and a room full of people engaging with the Quran. Join us at our next in-person Seeds of Wisdom retreat, online with our weekly Quran and Me sessions, or for the youth at one of our Camp Z retreats.